What's going on, guys? Adam here, your friendly comic book nerd here on this here channel called Comic Zine. And we got some stuff to talk about, so if you guys are curious to know what's going on here in the Zine Cave, stay tuned and we'll dive in. First things first, we're going to talk about this right here. This is Superman in Action Comics, a Elseworld annual number 6, and was created by John Byrne, I think it is. The story's name is called Legacy, and this is a 2-story book. It's got the main story, which is Legacy, which is the Superman story, and at the very end there's, I think it's called Doomsday or something like that. It's a little mini story. I didn't really read that one just because I wanted to talk about this, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about that. So we're talking about the little mini series. Probably in between, probably do a little live broadcast reading maybe on Facebook. I don't know yet. Anyway, so yeah, like how I'm doing these videos now, we're gonna do a random fact, and then we're going to do a little comic book review, and I'm going to be calling the comic book reviews back issue, just because a lot of the comics that I do read are back issues, because I have a lot of comic books at my disposal. So yeah, this video's back issue is this right here. Let's dive into the random fact about Elseworld. Elseworld imprint was created to feature stories separate from DC continuity, and concepts from various Elseworld stories were incorporated into DC continuity from time to time. The Kingdom Come miniseries, which was created in 1999, brought the Kingdom Come miniseries into DC continuity as part of an alternate timeline, which was known as Hypertime, which includes some of the alternate worlds depicted in various Elseworld titles. A new multiverse was introduced at the conclusion of the new 52 weekly series that includes alternate worlds that were previously seen in Elseworld titles. So that's pretty neat stuff right there. Elseworld, I've read a few. I read Holy Terror and now this, and pretty much in every Elseworld comic it tells you, like the first page, that Elseworld comics, they take the heroes and they change up like their origins and just the continuity of said character, and it just kind of gives you kind of just an alternate story, I guess you could say. And this is pretty cool because this Elseworld comic, it was based during the Revolution and stuff, and it's many years after that and the events that happen in that. Pretty fun little random fact there, I thought, about Elseworld. I want to read some more. I've read 2 so far. I really want to read Gotham by Gaslight because that was the first Elseworld title, if I'm correct, and that spawned the whole thing. And fun little fact about Gotham by Gaslight, I think DC and Warner Brothers are actually putting out a animated Gotham by Gaslight. And in that story, from what I've heard, it's Batman trying to track down Jack the Ripper. So pretty neat stuff. I'm totally stoked about that animated film. If it does get put out, I'll be adding it to my collection. To the back issue review, I'm going to give you a little quick rundown of that and just give you my personal thoughts on this comic. In this story, it's called Legacy, and it doesn't have to do with Superman, Clark Kent / Kal-El. It has to do with an ancestor of his, which is Jor-El, a Kryptonian named Jor-El. Or not Jor-El, but Jor-El. Don't get it mixed up. He flees like the Doomsday of Krypton, where, you know, it still explodes in this story here, and he is actually the last son of Krypton, and he actually comes to Earth and conquers the planet. Like, he lands in England in like the 1700s, and he conquers like 17th and 18th century Earth. 200 years later, his descendant Kal-El fights against his rule. So yeah, this comic right here was written and drawn by John Byrne, and I'm about to give you guys my little review on Superman in Action Comics Elseworld Annual number 6. I thought it was a very good story. Anytime I read an Elseworld comic, I'm totally like just mystified, I guess you could say, or just entranced, just because it's not your typical story, you know. Like, this was based during a little bit of the 17 and 1800s, and it's not Clark that's the last son of Krypton. It's Jor-El, a ancestor, and he lands on Earth and conquers it and becomes the Warlock Royal, because, you know, during them times you had like witches and warlocks and all that stuff, or, you know, suppose. And he took the fact that he had powers and used it to his advantage and pretty much just conquered, pretty much stopped the Revolutionary War, like flew to where, you know, our forefathers were having their meeting and pretty much took the building, and they all got hung. So the English won, you know, and then it goes from that to 200 years later, and you finally get to see Clark, and he's still, you know, he's still our Superman. Like, he's still a good guy, and he wants to do right, but he's related to the Warlock Royal. And, you know, Lois is in there, the Daily Planet's in there, and, you know, it's 200 years later, but they still have, you have like old like colonial like attire, and like the buildings still look like it's from like the 1800s, because I mean, think about it, someone lands during that time, you didn't have the Americas and, like, you know, the Industrial Revolution and things like that, so things just kind of stopped, you know. So I thought it was a great comic, and I think you guys should read it, and, you know, just find as many Elseworld comics as you can, you know, because I don't think Elseworld is still a company that still makes comics, you know, so anytime I get one, I'm going to read it. So yeah, if you guys can, find this little treasure, read it, and I don't know, my review's good, 5 stars. Alright, so that was my little back issue review, little rundown of that comic. Last but not least, let's get into our nerd news. So, if you guys are like me, you guys like to surf the web and find anything you guys can on comics and pop culture and things like that. And I found a pretty interesting article, I guess you could say. Because, you know, you haven't heard much news about Suicide Squad 2, but apparently Jared Leto and Margot Robbie have, or Margaret, I think it's, anyway, Harley Quinn. They are going to reprise their roles as Joker and Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad 2 movie. If you think about it, you had Batman in Batman v Superman, you had Batman in Suicide Squad, and there's talks of Gotham City Sirens, now Suicide Squad 2, and a Joker origin movie, possibly. And they're doing a Batgirl and a Nightwing. So think about this. Maybe they're not building a DC universe. Maybe Batman is kind of going to be like the flagship character that connects all these movies. What if they're not building a DC universe? What if they're building a Bat family universe? Anyway, food for thought. This has been Comic Zine, and if you guys are enjoying what I'm doing and enjoying how these videos are going, you can get all my links in the descriptions below and leave any comments you want, and I'll try to respond as much as I can and give me some feedback, and hit the bell notification button, and we'll keep diving into the world of comics and all things nerdy.